That's really not all that unusual. For most of us have seen Ben Hur, if we've seen it, in snatches on television. The chariot race has become iconic as perhaps the greatest action sequence ever filmed. And this, I will remind you, is before computer generation. Everything you see tonight is all done by really crazy people who do things. They're called stunt people. We know that Charlton Heston, Mr. NRA, was associated with it, and we have a sense that it won a ton of Oscars. But we will see it here tonight as it was intended to be seen. The film we see today is the climax of a long tradition that has had a significant transformative effect on American culture. General Wallace's novel was, with Uncle Tom's Cabin, the best-selling American novel of the 19th century. Sears Roebuck, in the decade after 1913, sold 1 million copies of the novel in its catalog. The stage version of the novel was seen by 20 million people on 3 continents between 1899 and 1919, complete with, would you believe, from 8 to 24 horses on stage. Have you ever been to the Auditorium Theater in Chicago? Anybody? They got 24 horses on that stage. The colossal silent film of 1925, which was the most expensive film ever made at the time, epitomized the silent cinematic epic associated with Cecil B. DeMille, and features a chariot race that in some ways is even more exciting than the one we will see today. For instance, they buried cameras in the turf of the racetrack. So you see these horses thundering over you, and I will tell you, it is a dramatic effect. And the 1959 film, the climax of the tradition, became quite simply an unprecedented global sensation. In our own time, Ben Hur has become a favorite of conservative evangelical Christians. The last thing that Charlton Heston did before descending into the darkness of Alzheimer's was to make an evangelical Christian animated version of Ben Hur, in which he both narrated and provided, at age 17, the voice of the young Prince of Hur. And it's actually very sad to hear him do it. Mr. Dobson's, James Dobson's Focus on the Family has produced a radio play version of Ben Hur. It's actually quite funny in all kinds of ways. Some of them not intended, I think. The 1959 film also had an acknowledged formative influence on many of the best-known recent filmmakers in America, including George Lucas. How many of you have ever seen The Phantom Menace? The Phantom, with that incredible pod race? Lucas tells us that it was an explicit homage to the chariot race in the 1959 Ben Hur, which really had an impact on him when he saw it as a child. How many of you have seen Gladiator? Ridley Scott's Gladiator has been called Ben Hur without Christians. More recently, as part of the globalization of American popular culture, gigantic arena shows featuring live sea battles and chariot races in which tens of thousands of people would show up in London and Paris and Sydney to see if anyone got killed in the chariot race. They have appeared in Europe and in Australia. A couple of years ago, the people of Bath, England, for some reason, united to reproduce a remarkable community production of Ben Hur. And as some of you may have just heard, MGM is finally talking seriously about remaking this great film. And as we meet tonight to watch the 1959 version, a TV miniseries, a version of Ben Hur, produced by a Canadian station by David Wyler, the son of William Wyler, the great director of this film, is being aired on the Ovation channel. Has anyone happened to see that It's getting a lot of play, actually. And my new book on the Ben Hur tradition. And in it, I argue that for over a century, Ben Hur helped Americans learn how to be secular without ceasing to be religious. From the novel's publication in 1880, religious Americans learned to overcome their opposition to first, reading novels, then to attending stage plays at the theater, and finally going to the picture show. By consuming Wallace's Tale of the Christ, which was above all else above moral suspicion, because it was about Jesus. From that process emerged a crucial symbiotic relationship between religion and popular culture in the United States that has kept religion vital in the American Republic, even as it has declined in other Western democracies. The result of this process has been a peculiar and a unique American culture that has become secular without ceasing to be religious. And I'm going to argue, I hope, that Ben Hur was crucial to that process, and particularly this movie. As some of you have already seen, I have brought along with me today some of the Ben Hur stuff, Ben Hur memorabilia that I have collected over the past decade. If you've not already done so, please take time at intermission to do that. I would tell you, though, that after intermission, my helpers here and I are going to take it down because it's going to be a long time before we get out of here tonight. Do you know how long this movie is? Are you sure? Easter's going to have already started before you get out of here. We've also brought a part of my collection of Ben Hur editions, various editions of the novel, including my first edition, first printing of the novel. Please don't steal it. We bought some of the Ben Hur spice tins. Have you seen those spice tins? They're everywhere. You can find them almost anywhere. They just survived incredibly. They're a good example of the ways in which the marketplace used General Wallace's novel to sell just about any and everything, including flour, bicycles, automobiles, perfume, jewelry, wallpaper, material, towels, you name it. There are posters from the stage play and from both of the epic films, including an unused original poster in 1959. Out there, if you see on your right, there is a poster. It looks just like every other poster. But you know it's original because something isn't on it. You know that it was really made in 1959. But some information is not on it. Can anyone guess what is not on this poster?
Waiting.
What kind of... Oh, well, that's interesting. That's a nice answer. It's not the one I was waiting for. Think about it. Something's not there. It tells you it was made originally, before anything else ever happened. Some information is not there. The awards, thank you, Stephanie, that it won beaucoup Academy Awards. The absence of that tells you they hadn't happened, right? Okay. Don't steal that either, it's very valuable. We bought Ben Hur comic books. I watched last night a kid looking at that comic book, and I thought, that's what it's all about. There are elaborate, slick programs that were sold at the stage play and silent film. There are 3 notebooks through which you can browse. 2 contain studio stills from the 2 films, and 1 is a collection of the amazing advertising and public relation campaigns associated with both of the films, especially with the one we are going to see tonight. Because in 1958, MGM mounted an enormous campaign, hundreds of thousands, finally millions of dollars, and that was lots of money back then, to sell Ben Hur stuff. In fact, this film more or less introduced on a mass scale the marketing campaigns that are so common in modern entertainment today. Mr. Disney got the message real quickly, right? In The Notebook, for instance, you will find pictures of Haya Reed, the beautiful Jordanian actress who plays the lovely Esther in this film. She's modeling Ben Hur jewelry and hawking Ben Hur wallpaper. My favorite of the PR photographs is the one of a beaming 2-year-old named Gary Stewart Pringle. He won in November of 1959 the Ben Hur Baby Contest. MGM ran a contest, publicized it like you would not believe. Any young man born so he can be at least 2 on November the 13th, 1959, could have his mama send in the pictures, right? All kinds of babies. But Gary Stewart Pringle, November the 13th is when the film was premiered. Gary Stewart Pringle won the award. You should look at it. This is a very proud baby. I've also brought along my Ben Hur chariot race game. It's never been used, folks. Don't touch it either. Anything else you can touch. After this advertising and PR campaign, the marketing of American movies would never be the same. I brought a complete script to the film. Look at it, it's interesting. And its LP soundtrack, which for the first time came with an illustrated making of Ben Hur. Some of you had, as a kid, this in your house. Everyone had it. The two-disc LP, and then inside of it, this booklet, The Making of Ben Hur. You know, if you get a DVD now, they have special features, documentary about the making of it. This is where it started, except it's a publication. There's also an MGM press book. It was intended for theater owners, like the Artcraft. And it includes a selection of ads you can send to the papers, a variety of press releases with information about the film, its stars, and its production, and suggestions about how to market the movie to various audiences. For instance, advice about how to sell to both public and private schools, advice to sell to Protestant and Catholic Christians and Jews. And the press book gave instruction to the theater managers on how to present this particular film. In every possible way, MGM wanted to impress upon audiences that Ben Hur was no ordinary film. The PR run-up to its release was unprecedented. The amount of money spent on advertising and publicizing was unheard of. Theaters sent out special invitations to first screenings. The film showed in only one theater in a city at a time, no matter how big it was. In Indy, there was only one Ben Hur theater. And they lasted for weeks, months, and then years. Everyone, if you wanted to go, you had to go to that place. And people who got the film had to do all these things. For one thing, they had to train your ushers how to behave in Ben Hur. They had to be specially trained. They had to wear special Sunday clothes and wear white gloves if you were women, only if you were women. The experience reminded many of people who went of going to church. And there is a photograph out there of a theater about this size, actually, but it has a balcony, and it's straight on, just like you are, but they don't look like you, right? We're all kind of in our Saturday night clothes, right? Well, every one of those people has on a suit or a dress. Every one of them. They have been told something special is going to happen. And when it started, there was an overture. Between the first act and second, there was an entr'acte, like the ballet and the opera. That's not usual, excuse me, in movies. Now, the studio wanted to convey, this is something special, and it's very, very serious. Tell of the Christ. This does not end well, except it does miraculously, right? So, I was here last night. How many of you were here last night? Anybody? Well, I don't know who you are, right? You know who I am. But the people who were here last night had a hell of a lot of fun. Because Rob Schultz comes out of here in a minute, and he does this. I don't. You gonna do it again, Rob? No. Oh God. He says no, but he will. And they do all kind. They do skits. They have raffles. They have a who came the furthest contest. Guess what? Guess who won? Austin, Texas. Some sucker was from Atlanta. Ha! Hiker. I got popcorn. I got an Easter bunny, and it was just. By the way, I've told Rob that I am officially not competing in the who came the longest to get here, because guess where I came from today? The Comfort Inn. Now, I told them last night when I came up to set my ward, I got Rob's mic and I said, the people at MGM would not be pleased with all of this levity. But they're all dead. Now, there's one thing I want you to watch for, because it demonstrates like no other thing can how seriously they wanted you to know that this is an unusual film. By the way, it was unusual for them because they had $15 million riding on it. They made this film, they remade their 1925 film because they were going broke, because of television. All right? And they gambled on Ben Hur, and they gambled well. So they want you to know something special is going on. What is the symbol of MGM? Lion. The lion. What does the lion do at the beginning of every MGM movie? It roars. Even in a silent film, it goes, you just can't hear it. Watch what happens at the beginning of this great film. Thank you very much. See you at intermission. Folks, the race goes on.